Every time she lets go of his hand, his heart starts failing. The words stopped the entire intensive care unit at St. Catherine Medical Center in Manhattan, but Dr. Malcolm Reeves only stared at Hannah Brooks as if she had committed an offense by standing beside the most dangerous patient in New York. Hannah was a 32-year-old night nurse with soft brown eyes, steady hands, and a full, curvy figure that never fit the narrow image some people expected from a hospital professional. She had spent years enduring whispers in elevators, cruel jokes in break rooms, and patients who assumed a woman her size must be careless with her own life and therefore unqualified to protect theirs. Tonight, after 12 hours on her feet, she was exhausted, behind on rent, and still carrying the ache of a former fiancé who had told her no successful man would ever choose someone who looked like her. Yet when the ambulance doors opened at 1:17 a.m., Hannah forgot every wound she carried. The man rushed inside was Roman DeLuca, the feared Mafia Boss, whose name made politicians lower their voices and criminals check over their shoulders. At 38, Roman controlled shipping companies, luxury hotels, and a criminal empire stretching from New York to Chicago. He was wealthy enough to purchase the hospital, powerful enough to ruin anyone inside it, and guarded by 12 silent men in black suits. But beneath the tailored armor and cold reputation lived a man poisoned by betrayal. 3 years earlier, someone inside his own family had arranged the attack that killed his younger brother, and Roman had trusted no one since. Now he lay pale and motionless beneath white sheets while the best doctors in the city watched his blood pressure collapse without explanation. "Move away from him," Dr. Reeves ordered. "You are a temporary nurse, not part of his private medical team." Hannah looked at the monitor, then at Roman's clenched jaw. His pulse had surged the moment a physician tried to restrain his arm, but it had slowed when Hannah placed her palm over his fist and spoke quietly. "Mr. DeLuca, you are safe. No one here will touch you without warning." The room had laughed at first. One young resident glanced at Hannah's uniform and muttered that the hospital had hired comfort instead of competence. Another nurse smirked at how Hannah's hips pressed against the plastic chair. Hannah heard them. She always heard them. Her cheeks burned, but she did not release Roman's hand. A scar ran across his knuckles, and despite his unconscious state, his fingers had curled around hers with startling strength. "His body is reacting to fear," Hannah said. "He may not be fully awake, but he can hear us." Dr. Reeves scoffed. "This man has survived gunfire, prison riots, and 3 assassination attempts. He is not afraid." Hannah lifted her chin. "Fear does not ask how powerful you are." The room fell silent, not because anyone respected her answer, but because Roman's monitor suddenly steadied. His heart rate dropped from 150 beats per minute to 92. The alarm stopped. For the first time in 20 minutes, his oxygen level began to rise. Dr. Reeves stepped closer, staring at the screen as though it had betrayed him. "Coincidence," he said. Then he pulled Hannah's hand away. Roman's body jerked beneath the sheets. The monitor shrieked. His blood pressure plunged and every guard reached inside his jacket. Hannah did not wait for permission. She pushed past the doctor, closed both hands around Roman's and leaned near his ear. "Roman, listen to me. Stay here. You are not alone." His breathing eased almost instantly. At the glass doors, Victor Kane, Roman's chief of security, watched with hard grey eyes. He had threatened 3 surgeons, cleared an entire floor, and promised consequences if his boss died, but now even he looked unsettled. "Who is she?" he asked. Dr. Reeves answered with open contempt. "Nobody important." Roman's fingers tightened around Hannah's hand. Slowly, impossibly, his eyes opened. They were dark, sharp, and fully aware. He ignored the doctors, the guards, and the men who feared him. His gaze fixed only on the woman everyone had dismissed. Then the Mafia Boss spoke in a rough whisper that silenced the room. "Her name," he said, "is Hannah, and nobody takes her away from me." Roman DeLuca's voice was barely stronger than a breath, yet every person in the intensive care unit obeyed it. Dr. Malcolm Reeves froze with one hand still hovering above Hannah Brooks's shoulder, while the 12 guards outside the glass doors straightened as if their boss had risen from the bed, instead of merely opening his eyes. Hannah felt Roman's fingers tighten around hers, not with panic now, but with command. "Mr. DeLuca, you need to conserve your strength," she said softly. His gaze remained fixed on her face. "Then stop letting them take away the only thing keeping me alive." Heat rose into Hannah's cheeks. Behind her, the young resident who had mocked her shifted uncomfortably, but Dr. Reeves recovered first. "This is a medical facility, not one of your private offices. Nurse Brooks is not qualified to manage your case." Roman turned his head toward him with visible effort. The movement was small, but the room seemed to grow colder. "You had 6 doctors around my bed," Roman said. She was the only one who noticed what was happening. Dr. Reeves opened his mouth, but Roman lifted one finger. "You will speak to her with respect, or you will leave this floor." Victor Kane entered the room without making a sound. At 6 feet 3 inches, Roman's chief of security looked like a locked door wearing a black suit. He placed a tablet beside the bed and glanced at Hannah. "The hospital director is on the line." Roman did not look away from Dr. Reeves. "Tell him I am purchasing the private wing." Hannah's eyes widened. "You cannot buy an entire hospital wing because one doctor insulted me." "I am not buying it because he insulted you," Roman replied. "I am buying it because someone inside this hospital tried to finish what started before the ambulance arrived." The silence that followed was different from the one before. This time it carried fear. Hannah looked toward the IV pump beside his bed. The medication bag had been replaced less than 10 minutes earlier, but the label was crooked, and the clear tubing held a faint amber line that had not been there when she first entered. She released one of Roman's hands and reached for the clamp. Dr. Reeves stepped forward. "Do not touch that." Hannah shut the line anyway. The monitor steadied. "This bag did not come from our pharmacy," she said. She lifted it toward the fluorescent light and saw a tiny puncture near the sealed port. Victor's hand moved beneath his jacket, but Roman's voice stopped him. "No panic. Lock the floor." The glass doors closed. Guards moved through the corridor, calm and silent, checking badges and exits. Hannah stared at the bag, her pulse pounding. "Someone added something after it was delivered." Dr. Reeves's face lost its color. "That is impossible." "So was his reaction to my hand," Hannah answered, until everyone watched it happen. Roman studied her as though he were seeing more than a tired nurse in wrinkled blue scrubs. "How did you notice?" "Because I pay attention when people decide I am invisible." The words escaped before she could soften them. For one brief second, something changed in Roman's expression. Not pity. Recognition. He knew what it meant to survive in a room where everyone had already decided who you were. "Victor," he said, "find out who entered this room from the moment I arrived. Start with every camera, every badge, every medication order." Dr. Reeves objected. "Hospital records are protected." Roman's eyes hardened. "So was my life." Hannah placed the suspicious bag inside an evidence container and labeled it carefully. Her hands remained steady, but Roman noticed the tremor she tried to hide when the young resident whispered that she was only seeking attention. "Say it again," Roman said. The resident went pale. "I did not mean anything. You meant for her to hear it." Roman shifted against the pillow, pain tightening his jaw. "Apologize using her name." The resident looked at Hannah. "I am sorry, Nurse Brooks." Hannah had imagined moments like this before, moments when someone powerful would silence every cruel voice for her. Yet now that it was happening, she did not feel rescued. She felt seen. "Thank you," she told Roman, "but you do not need to frighten people for me." "I did not frighten him for you," Roman said. "I reminded him who he chose to become." His answer unsettled her more than any threat could have. At 2:06 a.m., the room finally emptied, except for Hannah, Roman, and Victor stationed beyond the doors. The city lights glimmered through the windows, silver against the dark Manhattan skyline. Hannah adjusted Roman's blanket and checked the sensor on his finger. "You should sleep. You should sit. I am working. You have been standing for 13 hours. She looked at him sharply. "How do you know that?" "Your shoes," he said. "The left heel is worn lower, and you shift your weight every 20 seconds. No one had ever studied her without making her body feel like a problem. Roman noticed her pain without turning it into shame. Hannah sat beside him, leaving a careful distance between their chairs. "Why does holding my hand calm you?" she asked. His face closed again. "I do not know." "That is not true." Before he could answer, Victor entered holding the tablet. "We found the footage." On the screen, a man in hospital scrubs entered Roman's room carrying the altered IV bag. Hannah leaned closer, then stopped breathing. She recognized him. 3 nights earlier, the same man had followed her home and warned her to stay away from the DeLuca family. Roman saw the fear cross her face. "You know him." Hannah tried to deny it, but Roman's gaze dropped to her wrist, where her sleeve had slipped back to reveal a dark bruise shaped like a man's fingers. His voice became dangerously quiet. "Hannah, who put that mark on you?" Before she could answer, every light in the private wing went out. The darkness lasted only 3 seconds, but it was enough for someone to move. Hannah heard the scrape of a shoe near the medication cart. Then Roman's hand closed around her wrist and pulled her down beside the bed, just as glass shattered across the room. Victor Kane shouted from the corridor. Emergency lights flashed red along the floor, and a silenced shot struck the wall where Hannah had been standing. Roman moved despite the pain tearing through his body. He pushed himself between Hannah and the doorway, one arm braced against the mattress, his breathing sharp but controlled. "Stay behind me," he ordered. "You can barely sit up," Hannah whispered. "Then make sure I do not fall." The backup generator came alive, filling the room with dim yellow light. Victor entered with 2 guards, but the attacker was already gone. The broken window in the side door revealed an empty service hallway. Dr. Reeves appeared at the far end, pale and shaking, while alarms began sounding throughout the wing. "Nobody leaves," Roman said. "Check the stairwells, elevators, laundry shafts, and roof access." Victor nodded, then looked at Hannah's bruised wrist. "We need the truth now." Hannah's mouth went dry. For 3 days she had told herself the man who followed her was only trying to frighten her. She had not reported him because he had known her address, her work schedule, and the name of her younger sister in Ohio. He had pressed her against the brick wall behind her apartment building and warned her that if Roman DeLuca ever came into her care, she was to let the doctors handle him and walk away. He said no one would believe a woman like me over a man with money, Hannah admitted. Roman's jaw tightened. "What else?" He asked whether I remembered a patient named Samuel Vale. Victor glanced at Roman. The name changed the air between them. "Samuel Vale died 3 years ago." Victor said, "He was your brother's accountant." Roman's expression became unreadable. Hannah shook her head. "He did not die at St. Catherine. I treated him at Mercy General when I was a student nurse. He came in after a car crash. Before surgery, he gave me a flash drive and told me to hide it if anyone asked questions." Roman stared at her. "Where is it?" "I never opened it. I thought he was confused from the medication." "Where is it, Hannah?" His voice was low, not cruel, but urgent. "Inside a music box in my apartment." Victor immediately reached for his phone. Hannah stepped forward. "Do not send anyone there. My neighbor watches my cat when I work nights. She could be in danger." Roman swung his legs over the side of the bed. Hannah placed both hands against his chest. "Absolutely not." Every guard in the room became still. No one touched Roman DeLuca without permission. Yet Hannah held him in place as if his title meant nothing beside his condition. "You were nearly poisoned, your blood pressure is unstable, and someone just fired into this room," she said. "You are not walking out of here." Roman looked down at her hands, then back into her eyes. "The drive may contain the name of the person who killed my brother. And you may not survive the elevator." Their faces were less than a foot apart. Anger flashed in his eyes, but beneath it Hannah saw grief so old and deep it seemed carved into him. His brother's death was not simply a wound. It was the reason Roman had turned every feeling into armor. "Let Victor go," she said more gently. "You stay alive long enough to learn the truth." For a moment, the feared Mafia Boss said nothing. Then he sat back against the pillows. "Victor, take 6 men. Bring her neighbor here safely. Touch nothing until Hannah identifies the box." Victor left at 2:19 a.m. Dr. Reeves approached the bed with a syringe, claiming Roman needed a sedative. Hannah checked the label and stopped him before the needle reached the IV port. "This dose is twice what was ordered." Reeves's face tightened. "He is agitated." "He is conscious," Hannah replied. "That is not the same thing." Roman watched the doctor carefully. "Who changed the order?" Reeves looked toward the computer screen. The system must have made an error. Hannah opened the medication log. The change had been authorized using her employee credentials at 2:11 a.m. during the blackout. "Someone is framing me," she whispered. 2 hospital security officers entered moments later, followed by Director Paul Whitmore, who avoided Roman's gaze. "Nurse Brooks," Whitmore said, "we found unauthorized medication access under your name and footage showing you near Mr. DeLuca's room before his arrival. Until this is investigated, you are suspended." Dr. Reeves stepped aside with a look of quiet satisfaction. Hannah felt every eye turn toward her. The old shame returned instantly, heavy and familiar. She released Roman's hand and removed her badge. "I did not do this." "Escort her out," Whitmore ordered. Roman's monitor accelerated as soon as Hannah stepped away. He tore the sensor from his finger and stood, unsteady but terrifying. "No one escorts her anywhere," Whitmore swallowed. "Mr. DeLuca, the evidence is clear." "Then show all of it." A guard connected Victor's tablet to the room's main screen. The security footage appeared, showing Hannah entering the hallway hours before Roman's ambulance arrived. She carried a sealed envelope and looked directly toward the camera. Hannah stared at the image in disbelief. "That is me," she said, "but I was never here." Roman studied the recording, then looked at her left hand. "Trust the nurse. She knows who betrayed you." The words remained on the screen like a verdict, and for the first time since Hannah Brooks had met Roman DeLuca, the Mafia Boss looked afraid of an answer. "I do not know who betrayed you," Hannah said, her voice unsteady. "Samuel never told me a name." Roman studied the photograph of her standing beside his brother's accountant. She looked younger, dressed in pale green scrubs, with Samuel resting one hand on her shoulder. "Then why did he trust you?" Roman asked. Hannah closed her eyes, forcing herself back to that rainy night 3 years earlier. "Because I stopped a man from entering his recovery room. He claimed to be Samuel's attorney, but Samuel panicked when he heard his voice." "What did the man look like?" Victor asked through the tablet. "Tall, grey hair, gold watch, scar below his right ear." Roman slowly turned toward Director Paul Whitmore. The hospital director's hand rose instinctively to his collar, but the movement came too late. A thin white scar disappeared beneath it. Every guard in the room shifted at once. Whitmore backed toward the door. "This is absurd. Thousands of men have scars." Roman's voice became cold enough to silence the alarms. "Not thousands who served as legal advisors to my family." Dr. Reeves moved away from Whitmore, his face draining of colour. Hannah remembered the envelope shown in the altered security footage. "Samuel asked me to deliver something that night," she said. "A sealed medical file addressed to Roman DeLuca. I left it with the hospital director because security would not let me upstairs." Roman's gaze never left Whitmore. "You received it." Whitmore's polished expression finally cracked. "I receive hundreds of documents. Not from dying men who knew my brother was being led into an ambush." Roman pushed himself upright, but pain seized him. His knees weakened, and Hannah caught him before he hit the floor. One arm circled his back while her other hand pressed against his chest. For a moment, his full weight rested against her, his breath warm near her cheek. The guard stepped forward, but Hannah shook her head. "Give him space." Roman's fingers clutched the fabric at her waist, not from weakness alone, but because her touch was the only thing keeping his body from surrendering to panic. "Look at me," she whispered. "Not them. Me." His breathing slowed. The room blurred around them until there was only the exhausted nurse who refused to let him fall, and the powerful man who had never allowed anyone to see him need help. "You should hate me for bringing this danger to you," Roman said quietly. Hannah held his gaze. "You did not bring it. The people who betrayed you did." She helped him back onto the bed and pulled the blanket over his legs. When she tried to step away, he caught her hand. "Do not apologize for touching me," he said. "I was not going to." The faintest trace of surprise crossed his face, followed by something warmer. Whitmore suddenly reached toward the wall panel. Victor shouted through the tablet, but Hannah moved first, striking the emergency lock before Whitmore could release the doors. The director was trapped inside with Roman's guards. "You underestimated the wrong nurse," she said. Whitmore's expression twisted. "You think he will protect you when he learns the rest?" He pointed at Hannah. "Ask her why Samuel chose her. Ask who paid her nursing tuition." Hannah stared at him. She had received an anonymous scholarship after her first year, but the donor's identity had always been sealed. Roman's eyes narrowed. Whitmore laughed bitterly. Samuel Vale paid every dollar because he knew exactly who she was. Victor's voice cut through the tablet. "Boss, we found the music box." The camera turned toward a black sedan stopped beneath an overpass less than 2 miles from Hannah's apartment. One of Roman's men opened the recovered box and removed a flash drive hidden beneath its velvet lining. "There is also a letter," Victor said. Hannah recognized Samuel's handwriting before he read it aloud. "Hannah, your father did not abandon you. He died protecting Antonio DeLuca from the same traitor who later murdered Antonio's youngest son." Roman went completely still. Antonio was his father. Hannah's knees nearly gave way. All her life she had believed her father disappeared because he did not want the burden of raising a daughter. Instead, he had died saving the DeLuca family. Roman looked at her with grief and wonder, as if every invisible thread between them had suddenly pulled tight. Whitmore saw the realization and smiled. "Now you understand. She was not brought into your path by chance." The lights flickered again, and Dr. Reeves quietly moved behind Hannah with the uncapped syringe. Roman saw him 1 second before she did. He lunged from the bed, pulling Hannah against his chest as Reeves drove the needle forward. The syringe struck Roman's shoulder. Hannah screamed his name. Roman staggered, still shielding her, while his guards seized Reeves and Whitmore. His eyes remained locked on Hannah as his strength vanished. "The drive," he whispered. "Play it." Victor inserted it into the tablet. A hidden recording filled the screen, revealing Samuel Vale seated across from the person who had ordered the attack on Roman's brother. Hannah expected to see Whitmore. Instead, the face belonged to the one man Roman had trusted with his life for 15 years. Victor Kane betrayed you. Samuel Vale's recorded voice filled the hospital room while Roman DeLuca collapsed into Hannah Brooks's arms, the syringe still lodged in his shoulder. For 1 terrible second, no one moved. Then Hannah lowered Roman onto the bed, tore the syringe free, and held it beneath the light. "This is not a sedative," she said. "His pulse is dropping." Dr. Reeves struggled against the guards, restraining him, but Hannah ignored his protests. She checked Roman's pupils, followed the slowing rhythm on the monitor, and recognized the sweet chemical odor clinging to the needle. "It is a cardiac suppressant. I need atropine and activated charcoal now." A guard reached for the emergency cabinet, but Director Whitmore laughed from across the room. The cabinet was emptied before the blackout. Roman's eyes opened halfway. "Hannah," she gripped his hand. "I am here." The recording. His voice was fading. "Do not trust what you see." On the tablet, Victor's face remained frozen beside Samuel's. Then the image shifted, revealing the date stamped in the corner. Hannah looked from the screen to the live video connection. Victor was still beneath the overpass, surrounded by Roman's men. "The recording says it was made 3 years ago," she whispered, "but Victor has no scar beneath his left eye." Roman forced his gaze toward the screen. The man beside Samuel had Victor's face, voice, and posture, but a thin scar crossed his cheek. "His brother," Roman said. Victor's expression hardened through the live connection. "Elias Kane." Whitmore stopped smiling. Victor continued, "My twin brother disappeared 15 years ago. I believed he was dead." Samuel's recording resumed. The man identified as Elias described Whitmore's plan to seize control of DeLuca shipping routes by arranging the death of Roman's younger brother, then turning Roman against his most loyal allies. Dr. Reeves had altered medical records. Whitmore had hidden Samuel's evidence. Elias had worn Victor's identity during meetings, ensuring that if the truth surfaced, Roman would destroy the wrong man. "Where is Elias now?" Roman asked. Victor looked toward the black sedan. Its driver's door stood open. One of the guards lay unconscious beside it, and the music box was gone. A phone began ringing on the hospital table. Hannah answered on speaker. Victor's voice came through, but the real Victor was still visible on the tablet. "Midnight tomorrow," the caller said. "Roman signs control of the eastern ports to Whitmore, or the nurse's sister dies." Hannah's face went white. "Emily is in Ohio." "Not anymore." A photograph arrived on the tablet, showing Emily bound to a chair inside an abandoned waterfront warehouse. Behind her hung a digital clock counting down from 22 hours. Roman tried to rise, but his body convulsed. Hannah pressed him back against the mattress. "You cannot fight anyone if you die here." "My physician kept emergency medication in the armoured case," Roman whispered. "Victor knows the code." Victor gave it through the call, and a guard opened the case beneath Roman's coat. Hannah found the antidote, injected it into his IV line and watched the monitor. 50 beats per minute became 58, then 64. Roman's hand tightened around hers. "You saved me again. Save your gratitude for when your heart stops trying to scare me." Even now, with her sister in danger and armed men surrounding them, Hannah's voice remained steady. Roman saw the fear in her eyes, but he also saw that she had not surrendered to it. Whitmore leaned forward. "Sign the ports over, DeLuca. You have until midnight." Hannah turned toward him. "He will not sign anything." Whitmore smirked. "Your sister's life is worth less than his empire." "My sister's life is not yours to price." Hannah picked up Samuel's letter and faced the room. "My father died protecting this family because he refused to bow to men like you. I will not dishonor him by helping you steal what he died defending." Roman looked at her as if the rest of the world had disappeared. She was exhausted, frightened, and still wearing the wrinkled scrubs others had mocked. Yet she stood taller than every powerful man in the room. "Victor," Roman said, his strength returning, "prepare the cars." Hannah shook her head. "This time, we do it my way." She enlarged the photograph of Emily and pointed to a faded emergency sign on the warehouse wall. "That building used to store medical chemicals. I worked a disaster drill there during nursing school. There is a service tunnel beneath the south loading dock." Victor checked a city map. "She is right." Roman removed the IV from his arm. "Then we enter through the tunnel." Hannah stepped in front of him. "We enter together. Elias expects a helpless nurse and a weakened mafia boss. Let him keep believing both." At 11:42 p.m. the following night, rain hammered the Brooklyn waterfront as Roman and Hannah emerged from the service tunnel beneath the warehouse. He wore a black coat over the bandage on his shoulder, while she carried Samuel's flash drive inside her nurse's bag. Through the shadows, they saw Emily tied beneath the countdown clock and Elias Kane standing beside her with a gun. Whitmore had escaped during a staged hospital transfer and now waited near the port documents. "Sign," Elias ordered, "or she does not leave." Roman moved in front of Hannah, shielding her with his body. She stepped beside him instead. "Play the final file," she whispered. Roman connected the flash drive to the warehouse projector. Samuel's last recording appeared across the wall, exposing every payment, murder order, and forged document. Outside, police sirens rose through the rain. Hannah had secretly transmitted the evidence to federal investigators before leaving the hospital. Whitmore reached for her, but she struck the fire alarm, releasing a curtain of chemicals. The gunshot tore through the warehouse, and Roman DeLuca caught Hannah Brooks before she struck the floor. For one endless second, he believed the woman who had saved his life had given hers for him. Then Hannah gasped against his chest and pressed one hand to her upper arm. The bullet had grazed her, cutting through her sleeve but missing bone. Relief hit Roman so violently that his knees nearly gave way. He lowered her behind a steel crate, removed his black coat, and wrapped it around her shoulders with trembling hands. "You stepped in front of me," he said, his voice raw. Hannah winced but held his gaze. "You would have done the same. I am supposed to protect you. Then protect me by ending this." Across the warehouse, Elias Kane reached for the fallen weapon, but Victor arrived first. He kicked it away and forced his twin brother to the ground. For 15 years, Victor had carried the grief of losing Elias. Now he looked down at the man who had stolen his face, murdered Roman's brother, and destroyed innocent lives. "You should have stayed dead," Elias spat. Victor's expression remained cold. "My brother died the moment he chose betrayal." Federal agents flooded through the loading doors as red and blue lights flashed across the rain-soaked windows. Paul Whitmore tried to escape through a side exit, but Emily Brooks, still weak from captivity, pulled the emergency chain beside her chair. A steel security gate crashed down in front of him. He turned and found Roman standing behind him, one arm around Hannah. "This empire belongs to me," Whitmore shouted. Roman's face held no anger now, only judgment. You confused access with ownership. He handed the forged port documents to a federal agent. Take him. Whitmore pointed desperately at Hannah. She caused all of this. She brought Samuel's evidence back. Roman stepped closer, keeping Hannah safely beside him. No. She revealed what cowards spent years hiding. The agents arrested Whitmore, Elias and Dr. Reeves before midnight. Samuel Vale's recordings exposed the bribery network, the poisoned medication orders, and the conspiracy that had killed Roman's younger brother. Hannah's father was officially cleared of every false accusation attached to his disappearance, and records proved that he had died protecting Antonio DeLuca during an ambush years earlier. At 12:16 a.m., paramedics examined Hannah inside an ambulance, while Roman refused treatment for his own shoulder until she was bandaged. Emily sat nearby beneath a blanket, safe but shaken. You nearly died twice in 24 hours, Hannah told Roman, and you are still arguing with medical professionals. Roman looked at the paramedic, then back at her. I listened to one medical professional. Hannah tried not to smile. You are impossible. Yet my heart behaves when you are near. 2 weeks later, St. Catherine Medical Center held a public hearing. Dr. Reeves lost his license pending criminal prosecution. Director Whitmore's name was removed from every hospital building, and the residents who had mocked Hannah were required to testify about the culture of humiliation they had helped create. Hannah expected Roman to send lawyers. Instead, he entered the packed auditorium himself. The room fell silent as he walked to the front, still recovering, but dressed in a dark suit that made every camera turn toward him. Hannah sat alone near the aisle in a navy dress, her curvy figure no longer hidden beneath oversized scrubs. She had almost stayed home, afraid the audience would see only the body people had judged for years. Roman stopped beside her and extended his hand. Stand with me. She hesitated. They are all watching. Let them learn how to look at you properly. Hannah placed her hand in his. Roman led her onto the stage and told the entire room that Nurse Hannah Brooks had identified the poison, prevented a fatal overdose, uncovered a criminal conspiracy, saved his life, and helped rescue her sister. Then he turned toward the hospital board. You called her temporary because you failed to recognize someone irreplaceable. St. Catherine offered Hannah a permanent leadership position overseeing patient safety. She accepted, only after negotiating protections for nurses who reported misconduct and support for employees facing harassment. Roman watched her sign the agreement with unmistakable pride. He had not rescued her career. He had given her the space to reclaim it herself. That evening, they stood on the hospital rooftop beneath warm golden lights while Manhattan glowed around them. Roman placed his coat over Hannah's shoulders, though the air was not cold. You keep doing that, she said. It gives me a reason to stand close. His honesty softened something inside her that years of rejection had hardened. You do not owe me love because I held your hand, she whispered. Roman stepped nearer but did not touch her until she nodded. I love you because you saw the frightened man beneath the name everyone feared. You challenged me when others obeyed. You protected my life without surrendering your dignity. He lifted her hand and pressed it over his heart. You never needed to become smaller, Hannah. The world around you needed to become worthy of you. Tears filled her eyes, but for once they carried no shame. And you never needed to become colder to survive, she said. You only needed someone safe enough to trust. Months later, Hannah opened a patient advocacy center funded in her father's name. Emily returned to Ohio after recovering, and Victor began rebuilding the honor his brother had tried to destroy. Roman remained feared by his enemies, but at home he became the man who remembered Hannah's coffee order, waited outside every late shift, and reached for her hand whenever old nightmares returned. Their story began in an intensive care room where no doctor could save him, but it ended with two wounded people teaching each other how to live. Do you believe love becomes strongest when someone sees the part of us the world ignores? Subscribe to the channel for more powerful Mafia Boss stories about courage, protection, and the kind of love that never asks anyone to shrink.